¿Qué bola un tiburón?
From Cafeteria Film Studios in Miami, Florida, Phresh presents Que Bola, where we talk to various movers and hustlers in South Florida who are popping off and succeeding, and in the process, how they're influencing the 305 culture. My name is Darwin Figueroa, and I am your host. I hope you enjoy this, and let's get into it, all right? Listo.
Yo pues mi gente, que hola. I hope y'all doing good. I hope y'all prospering. I hope y'all winning, having good holidays. Toda esa vaina, right? In this episode, we sat down with the creators of the Pero Let Me Tell You podcast. Super awesome guys, DJ and Ish. We sat down, we talked about how Hispanics are coming up in terms of political power, how Hispanics are coming up in terms of consumer power, how various companies are trying to market us, how they're trying to reach us and talk to us in various ways. Some of them in good ways, some of them not succeeding. We talked about all the various nuances that are part of the Hispanic culture, how everybody's different. We're all not the same. Colombians, Cubans, Nicaraguans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Venezuelans, Brazilians, Peruvians, Chilenos, everybody. We're all different mezcla, but we all come kind of from the same cazuela. I hope you guys enjoyed this talk. It was really fun. And yeah, I want to thank you guys also for supporting and loving, all right? Thank you for showing that love. Yeah, let's get into this one, all right? Peace.
The levels is good. The levels is good.
Okay.
All right, so we're in another episode of Pero Let Me Tell You. Nah. We're right now in the Que Bola podcast with the cast and crew of Pero Let Me Tell You. Introduce yourselves. I call him Dish, but it's DJ and Ish. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
This is DJ.
This is Ish.
And this is not Pero Let Me Tell You.
This is do you guys ever watch BoJack Horseman?
I've been meaning to see it, but I've never gotten around to it.
Well, there's this thing in BoJack Horseman where he has this other character who did something similar to him in terms of his career, and he always fucking with him like, oh, is this like a crossover episode? I was thinking the whole entire time before coming in, is this a crossover episode?
It's totally a crossover episode. It's like
you were on our podcast, now we're on yours.
Yeah,
it's like Marvel and DC.
Yeah,
okay?
For real. Who would be Marvel? Who would be DC?
I've got more DC artwork on me, so I'm gonna have to go with DC.
And I'm not into either, but because he's my co-host, I'm gonna go with DC.
Yeah,
Kyle, you're not like Marvel, so we felt right in place.
We're good. We're good.
That's what's up, man. So tell me about you guys. You guys have the Pero Let Me Tell You podcast. You guys recently started it. It's you're going on your second year now, right? Or have you finished off your first
we
year?
actually started in February.
Yeah, this is like our 10th month.
We're about
You're about to finish your first year.
Yeah, our first year.
That's why I thought it was like going into your second.
Well, we've been talking about it for about, I don't know,
72 years.
It feels like 20 years. We've been friends for, we could almost say this, almost 30 years since we were kids.
Yes, which is weird because we're only 16.
Right.
Oh shit.
Yes,
damn,
so we were friends in utero.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We're like Benjamin. What is his
Benjamin
name?
Button. Yes.
And what part are you at right now? You at the 16?
We became friends in Riviera Middle School. When we
Yo,
started
shout out to Westchester.
Westchester and Proud.
6th grade.
We met twice for the first time, which is very interesting. That doesn't happen to a lot of people.
Nice.
Yeah. And we've always had like a lot of chemistry, and it's funny because although we're very good friends, we kind of a lot of times see things very differently. Even if we get to the same destination, we take different routes to get there.
Oh, I like that. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's really pretty.
And we would always say, like, we'd be great if we had our own show, like a talk show or whatever.
Since before podcasts were even a thing.
Okay. And now that, podcasts exist and anybody could have a show. Actually, he was the one who originally came up with the idea. And actually, he came up with Pero Let Me Tell You in terms of the title.
Well, I feel like we both came up with it, though. It all started, I was moving back home from...
Yeah, I'm giving you credit.
I know, but I'm sharing the credit. As a Leo, that never happens. We were driving back from New York. I was moving back to Miami after living up there for a couple of years. And it was about 2 a.m, no sleep. We were just still like plowing through because we were trying to get to our friend Melissa's house in Atlanta. And we're like, we should do something. We should have a podcast. But if we had a podcast, what would it be called? And we just started,
So it was kind of like a working session, that drive.
Okay, we'll call it that, as opposed to trying not to fall asleep and die.
I had been driving like 16, 17 hours straight.
Because this one only drives. Whenever you're on a road trip with him, he will never relinquish control of the damn wheel.
I have to drive. Damn. And our goal was to get from New York to Atlanta nonstop.
Right.
And we did
that.
Yeah, we did that successfully.
No, and that was after stopping in Baltimore.
Yes. Having dinner with another friend of mine in Baltimore and all that. But I was like, we're getting to Atlanta. And I started hallucinating.
He started seeing people on the road.
People on the road.
That were not there because it's a highway?
I'm like, okay, I think it's time that we get to where we're going to because it's not gonna end well. Yeah. But yes, that's
and then around January, end of like December, beginning of January, I literally called him up one day and I was just like, "Do you really want to do this podcast thing?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay, great," because I just bought 2 microphones.
Nice.
And the rest is history.
And that's how you guys launched.
Yeah.
And who coined the actual Pero Let Me Tell You?
I guess so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm horrible. I mean, he's better at remembering things than I am. So.
Because I thought that. It's like everything. The title is key.
Yeah.
And I think that the title kind of tells you a lot about what you're in store for.
Has to be catchy.
And yeah, it was originally his idea, but obviously we built upon that. And
What high schools did you guys go to?
Southwest.
Yep.
Both of y'all Southwest
Yes.
Eagles. All right,
Southwest
Purple
Eagles.
Pride.
Yep, Purple
That's
Pride.
right.
That's right.
Purple Pride.
Holla at the Westchester through and through, man. That shit's running through
yeah.
your veins.
No.
Yeah.
We grew up at
The only
Bird Bowl and
Bird Bowl, yeah.
Sergio's.
I went to Cypress Elementary. He went to Royal Palm.
Yeah, and if not for that, we would have been together since elementary school.
33165 in the house.
Wow, bro. I went to Tropical Elementary. So.
Did you really?
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, you were right there.
Yeah, I went to Tropical Elementary. I'm
I
from
used-
Westchester too. I'm
I
just a
used to go to
hidden
Tropical,
Westchester.
twice a week for the gifted program.
Yeah,
Well, aren't you special?
So I'm just saying, it's a fact.
yeah. Tropical used to be had a gifted program. I remember that.
yeah.
I wanted to be part of it, but they didn't let me in. I wasn't gifted enough.
Okay,
Miami-Dade public schools.
Yeah, because I feel like you're pretty damn smart, so you should have been allowed.
Apparently,
to...
no, but I guess I'm a late bloomer. I don't know what the fuck happened.
Yeah.
So you guys decided to shoot this off after having life experiences, because your show is primarily catered towards like current events and things with a Latin flavor, like a Latin twist. What made you guys decide that's the format that you wanted to go on? Was it something that like from your careers that you guys put it together and said this plays off for my career, or is it something that you guys like once again worked it out and said this is what we should go at?
Well, I think
He's an attorney and I'm in advertising, so no. To the
Oh,
career
but I think
portion of
to
it.
answer your question, it was twofold. Obviously, that's who we are.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. That's who we are. So, obviously, in a podcast, our personalities and our points of view are going to come, going to be
we're going to
portrayed.
lapse into Spanglish.
But I think that one of the biggest things was, and for me especially, I went to law school in the Midwest in Michigan. And I felt that during the time I was there, I had to constantly be explaining to people what being Hispanic or being Latin is. Because for some reason, once you leave, I don't know, the Tri-County area down here, everybody thinks that being Hispanic or being Latin means that you're Mexican and you put on sombreros and you celebrate Cinco de Mayo.
Wait, we don't?
And
we celebrate.
I've been doing this all
everything.
wrong.
Right, and you eat spicy food, and I felt that I was constantly giving people like history lessons and culture lessons of what it is to be Hispanic or Latino, and there's an entire continent under the United States that are of different cultures, and yes, we all speak Spanish and we're all Hispanic or Latino, but we're all very similar but very different at the same time. So we thought that it would be great if one of the things that we talk in this platform is talking about those nuances and the difference in that, and how maybe you're Puerto Rican, you're Colombian, you're this and that, and what your thing is, and compared to ours, and how again the similarities but differences, and kind of those stereotypes that are just so annoying.
And
Yeah,
well, go ahead.
No, I mean it's something that is frustrating being Hispanic myself, that people don't. Me myself, I don't have a Hispanic look. I get a lot of times. I get all kinds of stuff. I've been called Samoan. I've been called East Indian. I mean, I've been called all kinds of stuff. Like a friend of mine thought that I was from like Sri Lanka. Like he thought I was Sri Lankan. I
would love to know. I don't even think I've ever given any thought to what somebody from Sri Lanka looks like.
Well, so apparently it's somebody like me,
Yeah. Okay.
And then I've also been called Bangladeshi, and I'm like, that's a new one, like I'm back. But it's one of those things where people don't know how to reference you. So since they don't know how to reference you, they don't know what stereotype to apply to you,
right?
Because they're looking for a stereotype to apply to you,
right?
So it's like it's a big question mark in their head, and it's like a bomb. I see it in their face, a bomb. There's like, what should I do with you? You know what I'm saying? And it's sad because people don't have a reference. So like it's good that you guys are putting out these kind of references where people can say, okay, there's different ethnicities within Hispanic. You know, there's like different flavors of Latino and Latin American. Like Haitians come from Caribbean, Latin America. You know,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
like I feel like they're like a twist on it. You know, West
Yeah.
Indians también. Like that's also part of like. Trinidad and Tobago is right next to Venezuela, man.
Right.
Literally, they're like what 30 miles apart. So
Right.
you're not gonna tell me that you guys don't share cultures and shit.
Of
like
course.
that.
Yeah, we have more similarities than differences.
Yeah,
if you really
and,
start to scratch
and
at it.
so something that recently kind of blew our mind was that, and we had this in a previous episode. We talked about Amara La Negra,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and you know she's Dominican, but she
Okay.
was raised here in Miami. She's
Yeah.
a total Miami girl, and she's black. She has an afro, and we were completely blown away at the fact that she considers herself Afro Latina.
Well, we weren't so much blown away by the fact that she considers herself that
Well,
way.
no. We weren't blown away
As-
by it.
As the fact that people can't
understand
in the US don't get
don't
what
understand
that
what
means.
Afro Latina means.
How you can
and
be
it's funny because
both.
being Cuban, I know that in Cuba there's people. Well, not
we
only
don't
in
have to go
Cuba,
any further than Celia Cruz.
but in Latin America, there's people that are blonde and blue-eyed that are Cuban, Mexican.
Yeah.
There's people that are black with a huge fro. There's
We have-
people
we
that are
have
brown,
Jubans.
and
Yeah.
we have Jubans. I mean,
know.
that to me that's very
Everything.
common.
There's
It's-
Jewish Colombians, Jewish Venezuelans.
Mexicans. There's
that's
a huge
very
Jewish
common. It's
population.
like that doesn't faze me whatsoever. But a lot of people don't know what to do with her. They're like, wait, what do you mean that you're Afro Latina, but you're black? Yeah, but I'm
also-
Dominican.
yeah.
And him and I were talking about that. I'm like, but that's kind of like second nature. Like Celia Cruz. Celia
Yeah.
Cruz was black, but she's Cuban. She's
But you're
Latin.
Latino, so you've been exposed to this.
Exactly. So that's when people were like kind of freaking out about it, and she's got a lot of crap,
Yeah.
you know, for
That.
For that. I was like, what is wrong with people? Like, what do you mean that you don't understand that? But I guess they don't.
It's insane. Like
Put you in a box.
no, yeah. I mean, that's the thing that people want to find a box to put you in, and if you don't fit into a box that they think that they put you in, it's like you blow their minds, and it's like, oh, what are you doing to me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you guys put together the show, right, and you put together like the current events, how do you decide some things are too dicey to talk about? Do you decide on the current event it's gonna be like what people? It's gonna be more enticing because right now when I see I like to keep up on the news. I like keeping up on current events, but I see a lot of Trump everywhere, which I know is like okay. I know Trump shit is going off everywhere, but there's a lot of other things that are popping off that I want to know about. Like
Well-
what the fuck, bro?
well,
Like
some-
what
yeah.
shit, man.
Sometimes we don't decide until the day that we're recording.
Okay.
Where we're literally sitting there and we're just like, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
I think a big part of that is actually what you're saying with everything being so Trump focused.
Yeah.
We don't want to just become the Trump show.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's enough of that going around. So a lot of times we purposely, if there's something huge that's going on, you know, like the Kavanaugh hearings or
When the kids at the border,
at the border,
when they were
we
being
have to address
separated.
it just because if not, you know, Parkland, when
Yeah.
that happened, we actually the day after we recorded an episode without planning it, obviously, because nobody plans that. You know, we feel like there's certain things you have to talk about if you're going to talk about current events, or else you're just an idiot.
Yeah.
But I think on some level, we also purposely try to mix it up so that you're already listening to all of that somewhere else. And
Right.
what can we really, at the end of the day, contribute, right? Plus, we do know that people are coming to us for a plethora of reasons. You know, we're not entirely fluffy, but we're not. You know, we're not a news organization. You know, we're not journalists. So we do try to mix it up. And honestly, in one day, my favorite one to use, and I know this is probably yours as well. You know, in one episode, we went from talking about like racial profiling to Britney Spears versus Christina Aguilera.
Yeah.
Like that
We,
was
like,
literally
literally
one
did that.
episode. So to say we mix it up is putting it mildly, but we make a very concentrated effort.
But to go on what he's saying and to answer your question, in the very first episode, we both said that obviously when Trump comes up, I think it's very easy to know what our opinion and our position is in terms of the Trump administration.
MAGA.
But we're not going to be one of these people that's like, you know, Trump is a fucking asshole and fuck him and this and
Because
that.
that's not
And-
discourse.
because that's not discourse, and that's also not who we are, and there's
Right.
plenty of that. So if we're going to talk about Trump and the administration and something we don't agree with, we're going to do it intelligently and in discourse. Although,
he is. I'm just gonna make fun.
one time I did get a lot of
Flack?
flack
well-
because I said regarding the separation of the children at the border, I said, you know, if you think that if you're okay with that happening, what did I say?
You're a son of a bitch.
You're a son of a bitch, and we got some hate mail over that. But other than that, we try to keep it
Over the
kind
course of almost
kinda
40
clean.
episodes, I think that's okay.
We try to keep
Cool,
it
man.
kind
You
of
guys
kind
got
of
hate mail?
A little bit, but that's good.
It was
Yeah, that's an
It was a
accomplishment.
source of pride. I'm not gonna lie.
But you know what? We've talked about racial profiling, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement. That's been a huge one. We've talked about
LGBT rights,
the school shootings. So we've hit some really hard topics.
But then we've also talked about, Britney Spears versus Christina Aguilera, service animals on planes. What are some of the other just silly things? Those like
silly
wacky news pop culture
stuff.
type things.
Because everybody likes a little pop culture.
Yeah.
In there.
I thought it was more like, oh, this is what, like, these are things that gripe me, like. How, what's that show? The one, Family Matters.
Oh yeah.
Family Guy. Where it's
Family
like,
Guy.
this is what
Family
grinds
Guy.
my gears.
I thought that.
You're not
that
wrong.
like your approach to the current
not
event
wrong.
section of your show?
But I think because I always say that basically when people listen, specifically the part that's not the interview, what they're listening to is literally just a phone conversation that him and I were gonna have anyway.
Right. Yeah.
And now you're just in on the conversation. So that comes up naturally.
Well, also about the things that gripe us, we have the last segment of the show. We give Last Coke of the Desert,
Which is a translation of
is
La Última Coca-Cola del
Desierto.
Desierto.
We give shout outs to people. And sometimes when I give a negative shout out, I call it the gasless Coke.
Okay.
Like you're getting a gasless Coke.
All right.
And I've given a few gasless Coke to.
I haven't given any, have I?
No, you haven't. Okay. But you gave it to the Heifer Corporation organization.
Okay.
Which is a great foundation.
The Heifer Corporation, the Heifer Foundation is helping people subsist on livestock, and you keep mocking them.
I'm not mocking them. I'm just think they have a great name.
That's funny. So in terms of your current events, it's just spur of moment. You guys don't really plan that out. I know in terms of your guests, you guys have to think, okay, we're trying to bring these people on. When you are gonna bring on a person, how do you know what kind of person is gonna fit your particular audience and your particular style? In reference to other people, I'm sure that you get hit up all the time for collabs and stuff like that. So like of course you do your due diligence and you try to find somebody who's gonna be along your lines. What's that criteria like, or do you guys just like go like, oh, by like your instinct, or do you guys have like a sit it out and put it on a whiteboard and shit like that? Like,
I think all of the above.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, we want to talk to people who I think, number one, because we are kind of Hispanic focused. So are they either Hispanic or have a Hispanic angle? They may not be Hispanic, but maybe like, for instance, somebody that, we maybe speak to an author who may not be Hispanic, but has written a lot about, there's a particular author, we're trying to get actually TJ English. He's written a lot about Cuba and the Cuban mafia and the Cuban underworld. So he's not Hispanic, but he's delved in that world. So that's the angle. But then aside from that, it has to be somebody that we would like to actually sit down and chat with. Now, we never know what's going to walk through the door.
Right.
Because we could be like, wow, we're really excited to have this person. And then afterwards, we're like, man, that was a little rough. That was rough. And we're going to have to do the magic of editing afterwards to make them seem interesting.
Yeah. Because some people are very animated and they go along with like kind of, how we are.
Like you.
But
I mean, you were a great interview for that reason because we fed off your energy, you fed off of ours, and it kind of just worked.
Right. The best type of interviews are the ones where, you think you're going to ask all these questions. And then as you start speaking, you kind of go off script and just let it naturally be. And then there's the people that it's like, okay, so what inspired you to do whatever? My mother.
Yeah.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years? Working on the same thing. It's like, okay, well, thank you for being on, pero let me tell you.
And then we just reach out to them. And honestly, on some level, it's a combination of Hispanic interest and who says yes.
Oh, well, what are the things that interest you, though? Like, what are the things that are interesting from your perspective that you want to... Because, okay, so your show is about, like, highlighting your interest, but, like, in the Hispanic view, like, from the eye of a Hispanic. So, like, what are the things that interest you guys that say, these are the things that I want to, like, showcase and highlight?
Okay, that's a great question. In terms of the Hispanic angle, and as far as our guest goes, I'm really interested in people that are either first or second generation who are very much American and very much a product of the U.S., but are Hispanic. A great person, when you say that comes to mind was when we interviewed Martha of Miami.
Okay.
Martha, she created this T-shirt line, the pastelitos, the croquetas, the pastelitos, the Cuban bread, which she tapped into something that was very, very relevant, especially to Miami.
And in the advertising, that's like she had an insight,
right? Because I mean, especially like you, it's
Shout
like
to
being
Martha.
into cultures.
But yeah,
it's like being
same
into
with
cultures.
your merch.
Yeah.
You do something similar,
Right, you do something very similar.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that we belong to two different cultures. You know, whether we think we do or we don't, we are in two
we're a
different
merger.
cultures. We're a merger. And a lot of times, what's the saying? You're too Cuban or Hispanic for the Americans and too American for the Latino or the Hispanics. And that's very true. We're kind of stuck in the middle. So I'm very interested by people who tap into that kind of subculture, if you will.
Yeah.
Especially with younger people, because, you know, we're not one or the other.
It's crazy, right? Isn't that basically like the bread of what it's gonna, like the butter of what's gonna become the United States, like those people? Because the vast majority of like Hispanic Americans, which are gonna go into the majority, are gonna be those kind of people. The people who aren't completely like they're welcome, but not like completely welcome by the Hispanic side, because you don't speak Spanish perfectly, and you don't know te trabas when you say certain things.
Yeah.
And then it's like the American side, because the American side, you just don't look like what American person looks like.
Yeah.
But
so
We're brown.
yeah.
Well, but I mean, I don't know what the actual
We
statistic
turn brown
is
when the
anymore,
sun hits us.
But I think like initial projections was like by 2025, but I could be wrong. You know, Hispanics were going to surpass, quote unquote, you know, white people in terms of being the majority, minority, or whatever they want to phrase it.
That falls in there is the white Hispanics, because the thing is that's one thing that people don't understand. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day.
But look at this guy next to us.
Yes, exactly. But
Light hair, light eyes. I mean,
okay, this goes into something that whatever. So like, this is an acquaintance of mine, right? And he's a white Hispanic, a white Cuban Hispanic. He's like blue-eyed, blonde hair, but he has very conservative views and is very, how can I put it? He has like, he thinks he's a good old boy, you know?
because he can pass.
Because he could pass 100% until he says his last name.
Until he opens his mouth.
Until he opens his mouth and says his last name.
Rodriguez.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Gonzalez. I'm sorry, you're not from the old country.
Yeah.
It's the Hispanic version of the old gay thing where it's just like, no, you look straight until you open up your mouth and a purse falls out.
Exactly. It's the same thing. So it's like, bro, these situations arise where I'm like, man, why do you take that road? In like,
yeah, but I think with what you're saying also, it's Cubans are very
We're an
conservative.
interesting
We're
culture.
very, very conservative, more than any other Hispanic or Latino.
Yeah.
Cubans are
Yeah.
very,
And when we say conservative, we're not just talking, I think, culturally, because I think Hispanics in general are all culturally conservative. We're talking politically conservative.
politically,
yeah,
and I mean, I'm the dirty Democrat of my family.
the dirty Democrat.
The dirty Democrat.
I'm surprised they let you in the house.
Let me tell you, when I was a kid, we had family in Houston, okay, and they were Cuban, and you know, we used to visit them a lot, and my parents and my family here in Miami would be like, porque tú sabes que esa gente de, referring to my family in Houston, los de Houston, ellos son demócratas, so no hables nada.
Wow, they were Democrats in Texas?
Yeah, they were Democrats. I know, right? They
That's
were
tough. That's
Cuban
tough.
and Democrats in Texas.
Tough.
But it was like if it was a disease,
Ellos le gustaban pasar trabajo, right?
we're gonna
Like-
pretend that doesn't exist. But Cubans are very conservative. I mean, it also has to do with
Do you think
John
that-
F. Kennedy.
Yeah, it's all damn JFK fault. But I'm gonna flip it on you actually. Do you think that's changing
Do I think it's changing?
as generations pass?
Well, I think what's happening is
Like our generation, let's say.
like you guys are tapping into those people who have been shunned by one side, shunned by the other, so they're creating their own culture. Those people are changing, because what they're doing is they're getting little tidbits from both sides, and they're creating their own like lane, their own type of like standing politically. You know, they might be liberal on certain things, but they might be conservative on other things. So it's not like they're all not one on one side and all on the other side.
Yeah, and I think most people are like that.
But I
mean, realistically,
think with the white Cuban,
Yeah.
because the white Cuban settled in South Florida, Miami.
Yeah.
So here in this microcosm, they are the privileged
Yeah.
one.
They're the white
Majority.
people.
They are
majority.
They are
We're
the white people.
They're
Yeah,
the white
They're the
exactly.
white people.
Exactly. Yeah.
They are the privileged one.
Yeah.
So I think that also
Plays
has-
has something to do with like the way
Yes.
they're gonna vote and things like that,
Yes.
because of course they're gonna want to keep what they have, or like the
Absolutely.
power or whatever
And
it is.
they're also coming from a place where they couldn't keep what they had.
Yeah.
They're
So that
conservative.
affects their
they went
perspective
to
too.
private school.
Yeah.
Which we did not.
Which
So,
we did
so
not.
that probably says a
They
lot
went to
about us.
private school. You dress a certain way. So
Yeah.
you're the white man.
Yeah,
You're the
you're like the white. But the thing is that when you step outside South Florida, then you get really quickly slapped when you
Oh, yeah.
when you
Oh,
confront
yeah.
somebody who's really about that life.
My
You know what I'm
favorite is
saying?
when you hear people here say, with like profiling by police, or but that doesn't happen. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen. It's like, no, of course that doesn't happen, because when you're pulled over by Officer Gonzalez,
'Cause you're the
yeah,
white
they're not
person.
gonna, yeah,
You
they're
are the
not
white
gonna,
person.
they're not gonna beat Rodriguez, yeah.
That's the way it works in South Florida. I mean, that's funny because that's one side of South Florida people really haven't seen. People haven't seen South Florida as like like a reflection of the United States, which it is. It's a fucking reflection of the United States. Yeah. And just like in the United States, there's a white majority who have a certain control of power, and they want to remain in power, and they want to keep their certain interest, in play. It's the same thing here. It's just that there's not white people, because white people fled as soon as all the Cubans got here.
We're very loud.
So like
Yeah.
all the Cubans got here and Colombians got here and started with
Sure.
a tiroteo with coke and cowboys. They was like, yo, I'm out this bitch.
We're outta here.
You know?
Let me know how this works out for y'all.
So with what you're saying,
Exactly.
My parents, the house my parents live in, which is a house that I grew up in, and they still live in Westchester on
Yeah.
112th Avenue by Miller Road.
But why don't you just give them the address? Yeah,
My parent, when we moved there, except for another house, everybody on the block was American.
Yeah.
Everybody. In my elementary school, everybody was majority American.
I remember
like
that.
white. And it's so funny because last year, the lone American lady, she passed away. That was it. She was the last standing white woman on my parents' block. And, just in 1981, when they moved to that house, everybody in that block and surrounding area was white.
When I was a
Everybody.
kid, bro, Westchester was a white enclave.
Yeah.
It was definitely a white. I went to school and I had white kids in my elementary school at Tropical Elementary.
Yeah.
It was like I was the one who stood out when I was a little kid. And now it's like
You were
if
the exotic one.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, Darwin with the weird name and his little brown kid is like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But
Darwin, where are you from?
yeah, and but
and that's also
kinda-
not a very Hispanic name either.
Yeah,
so
Darwin's
like,
not a
yeah,
Hispanic name. That really fucked me up.
yeah, they had no clue where the hell
Then
to
again,
put
it
you.
doesn't sound Sri Lankan either.
This is
Yeah.
true. Well, I don't know what a Sri Lankan name would be.
Yeah,
so
I mean, shit. Darwin is a scientist, so I mean,
Yeah.
anybody can name their kid Darwin. So it's like one of those situations where
and they still didn't let you into the gifted program.
yeah, that's what
Your
it was.
name was Darwin.
I think it was. And those people like that growing up, that it expanded my mind.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Growing up with little kids who weren't all the same color, and like I had my friends who were like kind of brownish like me, but we were all like little kids and we were all little friends, because like when you're a little kid, race and all that shit doesn't play nothing.
Doesn't
you know?
matter.
Well, but
Doesn't
you
matter.
didn't feel, as a little kid, you didn't feel different? Because I did.
Did I feel different? I did feel different, but I didn't feel ostracized by that difference. I felt like I was
didn't.
different, but I didn't feel like somebody was being different with me because I was different.
Right.
Like I just felt I was different because I didn't look like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? So since like the vast majority of my friends,
So wait,
peers,
did all the Hispanic kids go to Royal Palm then? Because I mean, I was okay. Like
No,
I didn't feel
mean,
different that
But
way.
the thing is that like my class was made up of, I would meet a lot of different kids growing up, and that was just my home school because I grew up in Westchester.
Right.
So like that kind of exposed me to different type of thinking from very young, you know. So it like prohibited me from like being like, oh, I'm only gonna be like this kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm sure that kind of like played its part in your life because you guys grew up in the same experience, right? Now after college, you said you went to like Midwest college, right?
Yeah.
After college, what made you say, I want to come back here? What made you say, I want to stay in South Florida? What is it that makes you still want to be part of this scene?
Well, for me, I mean, my life and my family are here. And
Okay.
for me, I mean, what's the point of being successful somewhere else if I don't have anybody to share it with? I mean, there's certainly parts of the Midwest that I loved. I loved Chicago. Chicago's my favorite city in the country. And I loved Detroit. Have you been to Detroit?
Yeah, no, I've been.
I think you would really
Yeah,
enjoy Detroit.
I agree.
Detroit,
maybe in summer.
Yes. Yes.
As a rule, the Midwest,
Detroit
summer.
is
I
one
don't
of
fuck
these
with the cold.
places that people have a total misconception
Okay.
about Detroit.
Yeah.
It's really gritty, but it
Yeah.
has like a great like culture and art scene. But I don't know. I'm from here, and
Yeah.
you know what's really interesting is that prior to moving to the Midwest, I kind of went through a phase. I don't know if everybody goes through that phase. I hate Miami. I'm so over Miami. Screw Miami. Ugh, I hate this place. People are rude, blah, blah, blah. When I was in Michigan, I was like, I'm from Miami. I love Miami.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like the cultural representative.
But I think that
Miami.
but that's like, well, that's the old adage of like, I can make fun of my family, but you better not make fun of my family, and I think it's very similar to that.
I missed Miami so much when I was in the Midwest in Michigan, and I loved Michigan. I loved living there. It was a great experience, but I didn't realize I was going to miss Miami as much as I did. That I started watching Univision.
Oh, damn! In the Midwest, you're trying to get what he was
watching
doing.
Univision.
Shit.
He was the reason their ratings tripled in that one day. Yes.
So because that's who you are.
And how do you? This is another thing that I ask you this because it comes across my head when I'm trying to like build my audience and talk to my people. How do you address a Latino who is like the majority, which is Mexican and stuff like that? Like I have friends of mine that are leaving Miami. And they're moving to like North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. And the vast majority of the Latin population there is Central American. It's not like here in Miami where the vast majority is South American because of proximity so much closer, right? So how do you talk to their story? Because they still have the same story we have, but it's with a different flavor. It's like how do you address that? Do you try to address that, or you just say this is my version and I'm gonna talk to you about it through my version and hope you understand it through this version of mine?
I think there's just a commonality at the end of the day. There's nuances. Like for instance, I was in New York for a couple of years, and I met Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, Venezuela, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And, on the base of it, sometimes, you're in a situation, you kind of all just look at each other and go like, white people, right?
Yeah.
But, like, so there's that. But it's, it's something as simple as, we call it la chancleta.
Yeah.
Mexicans is la chancla.
Yeah.
The other one is, but it's the same thing. Yeah. The experience is the same.
Mexicans call it, what is it? Job, la
chamba.
La chamba.
Yeah.
Just... It's a different word, but it's the same thing. It's the same experience.
We all celebrate quinces.
Right.
16.
We celebrate quinces. We all have,
16.
How does that happen?
Yeah, it's like sweet 16.
It's, it's hotter down there. We mature faster. We ripen quicker.
Yeah, but I'm saying, how did everybody decide on like at 15 you have to have this party? Like across the entire South American, Central America.
I mean, it really is. It really is what they call here a debutante ball. I mean, that's
exactly.
really what it is.
Like Sweet 16. So yeah,
I just think I've always found interesting that it's like off 1 year. I mean, I don't know who created that rule.
Because you no que wear you no que wear adelantado.
Yeah.
They said that's it. La 15 ya está.
Yeah,
Or you know what? I mean, I don't know this to be fact.
Back in the day,
maybe
though,
back in the
man.
day, the mortality rate was higher at
Yeah,
a younger
true.
age, and you had to get married sooner. A year counts.
Yeah.
You had to get married like when you were like 18, 19.
The mortality rate was a little bit
the age of death was a little lower, so it's like shit. We can't wait to
Latin
16.
American
No,
countries.
at 15 she's a woman. Let's get her married. So
That's crazy, man.
But that's what it comes down to. Is I think if we tried, specifically on our podcast, if we tried to appeal to a Mexican audience or a Venezuelan or a Colombian
not
audience,
appeal, but I mean, like,
right.
reach.
But
Yeah.
I'm saying, but to reach them, if we tried to reach them by saying, "Oh, we're going to try to sound like you," not necessarily accent-wise, but just say your experiences, it would be inauthentic. And I think that's one of the reasons that people have found us across the board. I mean, we have listeners in freaking Cambodia. I don't know how that happened in Cambodia. Obviously,
Shout out Cambodia.
there's a shout out Cambodia, but obviously there's a commonality to our experiences that is reaching people.
That's cool, man.
We all celebrate kingses and we have big, loud families.
Yeah,
That's
and we love
crazy,
greasy
man.
food.
That's crazy. Do you guys try to hyper focus one thing over the other, like food or like music or something like that?
We haven't had anybody who's music on the show.
I think that, look, when we talk about, especially, well, not only current events, but even in the interviews, we bring in the like Hispanic factor a bit into it, because we'll say something like, "Oh, well, because my loud family," or something,
or like, "Oh my God, what's your favorite?"
Something that we talked about
or...
one time that kind of blew my mind was that this was when I was in the Midwest.
Okay,
I was talking to a few friends of mine, girls, that were very good friends of mine up there. And they were talking about some guy, and they said something along the lines that, "Oh, he's like 25 and he lives at home with his parents. He's such a loser."
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I'm like, at home? you live with your parents until you got married.
Yeah.
Or you're just too old.
If you're
like, at that
25
point.
and you're going to college or whatever, going to
Even
school,
if you're not going to college.
you live with your parents. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Like, he's 25 and that. I mean, it sounds stupid that we're talking about this, but that is like one of those cultural things that blew my mind because that for like Hispanic and Latino culture, that's so normal. You live at home. You live at home until you got married, or until you reach a certain age, much later. But definitely not 25.
They always think that
It's just like a little awkward to have sex in your
Definitely
twin
not
bed. Yeah.
25.
Yeah, it's that's what I was about to say. Like, what's up with parents still thinking that like la niña la princesa coming home at 4 a.m. when she's like 26, or
Yeah.
like
Bueno.
man, like la princesa, like yo,
Listen,
you need to take that princesa. You need to get
Even
the fuck
Cinderella
out.
got home late from the ball. Okay.
Every night, fucking yo, la princesa going to fucking mad parties. So
Princesa está en 11, no joda.
La princesa está en 11. So yeah, like when you have those commonalities, dude, is it hard for you to like? Is it hard for you to say, because I personally I don't want to accentuate my Hispanicness, but I just talk the way I talk, and I can't just like.
It's who we are.
But like the other day, I saw this advertising for Lyft. I don't want to give Lyft a fucking shout out, but it was the worst advertising in the fucking world. It was like, oh, did you know that? It literally a billboard in downtown Miami says, did you know that you spent over, I don't know, like 300 hours in your car or some shit? That's loco. And I'm like, come on, Lyft,
Thank you for touching.
fuck
on this.
you, Lyft. Like, I felt like saying fuck you, Lyft, for that stupid shit. Like, I know I'm Hispanic. I don't speak like that, and that doesn't speak to me. So, but like, how do I speak is the question.
Hello.
So I
the
work
word
at,
caliente.
Yeah, so
Caliente.
I work in advertising, and that is my biggest pet peeve. Of like, I know what you're trying to do.
But you did
I
it
give
badly.
you, I give you props for even acknowledging that it is a target demographic that you need to speak to. You know what? I'm going to give you that credit. But that to me shows that you have absolutely nobody of color on your team.
None of us brown people.
No brown people on your team.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like what you were just saying about now about the Caliente thing. You know, it's one of our biggest pet peeves, which is Spanglish is almost its own language, and you have to know how to speak. Well, the name of our show is pero let me tell you why. Because if you speak Spanglish, 9 times out of 10, you're replacing the word but with pero.
Yeah.
You know, many times when we're talking amongst each other, we'll just be like, yeah, no, I was at the store, but no, you don't say at the store, but you say I was at the store, pero es que then, you know,
Yeah.
that's Spanglish. It's
Yeah.
the nuances. We don't just pick the one word that English-speaking people know and translate it for their benefit. That's not Spanglish.
Oh, we're so excited about this fiesta.
Oh my
the
God.
fiesta is gonna be very caliente.
It's so caliente.
Like,
I hope
oh
I took a siesta today.
God.
Like, no, you sound like you're having a stroke.
Oh my god.
Like, shut the fuck up.
Like, shut up.
You're ruining my language.
Yeah, exactly.
I find it insulting.
ancestors
I
are
find it
dying
insulting and hilarious at the same time. You know, you would think that they got it by now, but no.
It's a bad one.
It's
Like,
like, God bless them, they're trying.
yeah,
But-
they are trying. I mean, everybody's aware that we're a growing majority in terms, and people want to like hone in on us and talk to us. I myself want to learn how to talk to millennial Hispanic more, you know. Pero
Why?
I
Don't
know
talk
that
to
it's like
millennials, no.
not millennial, pero ya tú sabes, like my people who are my age, people like you guys, like people who grew up here, like with the same experience. Like
But you
I want
know how
to
to
talk
speak
to them.
to
You know what? I
That's
just
the
think
thing.
I'm gonna make a very bold statement here.
Really? Because you're always so subtle.
I think that has to do with the culture of the, I don't want to say U.S. society, but like of the government, of the country, of everything.
Okay.
I don't think the United States really gives a shit about Latins. I really don't think they do. Because, for example, and whether it's racist or something, I don't know if you want to get this serious on this interview. You know, whenever there's, mass murder, genocide, whatever, in Europe, which is terrible. I mean, because I've cried over Syria. You know, I've even posted it on my own personal Instagram. You know how it kills you to see those images. So rightfully so. But that is something that gets a lot of coverage in the United States, which it should. When do they ever talk about anything like that going on in Latin America,
Never.
which is right there? I mean, in Venezuela, what continues to happen in Venezuela, you know, that young people are being murdered by the government, though they're starving, and that gets absolutely no coverage. Or if it does get coverage, it's like a little byline at like the bottom of the page. Last year, when all those, last year when los venezolanos se tiraron para la calle, remember that in Caracas? I purposely went on like CNN, Fox News, NBC, you know, all the major news outlets. I'm like, I want to see where they put Venezuela, and none of them had it as like a top.
Because they don't.
was
It's not a.
beautiful.
Because it's not a. It's not. Yeah, like you said, they don't really care. To be honest with you, they don't care. Like they dominate it. So it's like something that they have under control, and they don't really care. Like as long as those people can't reach here, like they give a shit when there's a caravan coming. You know, it's like, oh, there's a caravan, the fucking caravan.
There's a weird level of optics to it, because many countries in South America are considered third world or third world-ish, but they don't look third world-ish. Like Angelina Jolie going to, one of the countries in Africa with a child in the middle of the Dust Bowl.
Yeah, that's third world-ish.
That's third world. But if she goes to Caracas, it's like, oh, but there's like a Starbucks on the corner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's so there's no. They don't know how to sell it.
I don't know
almost
if
to the
it's
the box.
ignorance. I don't know if it's racism. I don't know what it is, but I just feel that like Latin American issues are not covered and they're not relevant to U.S. media.
But how do us as Latin Americans? How do we address that? How do we get that in the
By
forefront?
starting a podcast that highlights the Hispanic
I
experience.
think now with what we were talking earlier, now that we are becoming the majority and we're first, second generation, now we're shedding light to that because we're also in the position, many of us are in the position of power. Many of us, because, we were raised or born here, they will listen to us, So I think that now maybe the pendulum is going to change. But up to now, even now, it's
then you might end up with assholes like Ted Cruz, like, come on, man, what is this guy all about?
This beer bottle in front of me is more Hispanic than Ted Cruz.
I mean, his name is Ted Cruz. His dad came here from Cuba, bro. This guy's literally like first gener.
He's Canadian.
He's Canadian.
Canadian, yeah.
He's Canadian. Ponle la tapa pomo que he's Canadian. Okay, like I mean,
we love Canadians.
Yeah,
we
but
love Canada.
But what I'm saying
Canada.
is, you sit
Shout out
him
to
here with
Canada.
us with the Spanglish back and forth,
Yeah.
and ese tipo tendría una cara de perdido.
Yeah, for sure.
He's awful.
Yeah. So I mean, but like that's the thing. These are us. Like the rise of Hispanics doesn't necessarily correlate with the rise of Hispanic values that have come from the old country. Because the values that come from the old country are like work hard, put in work, you're gonna get your prize, like keep your head down, be humble. Right. Those are things that you're taught.
But I also think that with what you're saying in terms of politicians, that politicians have to walk a fine line because they have to appeal to their Hispanic
constituents.
Right, but then they have to also appeal to the white man.
Can I say something that I think is maybe a little controversial? I think what happened with Hispanics in this country to a degree is something a little interesting. Is to your point, the first big swath that came into this country were Mexican.
Yeah.
And I feel like when those first couple of waves came in, their desire was so strong to assimilate that Hispanics almost in some weird way through those first generations probably lost a very significant foothold that could have been built upon. Because I feel like in the last maybe like 30, 40, 50 years or so is when you've started to really see that, no, I'm Latino,
Yeah,
I'm
like
Hispanic,
Hispanics being
I'm
Hispanic.
Latinx. Right. And so unfortunately, because there was that pressure to conform, to assimilate, to, you know what, I'm Gonzalez, but I pronounce things Mariposa as opposed to Mariposa. Right. You know what I mean? Like, even though this entire city has Hispanic street names, I'm going to anglicize my pronunciation because I don't want to stand out. And I think that unfortunately, because of that pressure that they felt, we've lost time that we're not trying to make up.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, that could.
That's pretty nuts, man.
Yeah.
So where do you guys see your show going from this point forth, man?
Well, the next stop is a Grammy. Spoken word, obviously.
You guys are coming up on your first year. You're already you're angling around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna, and you guys are growing steadily. You have a good amount of following, and people like your stuff.
And
I love your stuff
for all of the support you've given us. Because
Man, you guys are awesome.
You have been a huge supporter of us from the beginning, and you're always giving us shout outs, and you're always helping promote things, and that's the kind of thing ultimately. We can talk about goals and what we want to do and how big we want to get, but ultimately, I think what we really want to do is continue to foster that sense of community.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, man.
And I thank you for that because I think you give it to us, and we hopefully give it back to not only yourself but to
I don't
others.
even expect anything back. I just want people to put on. I just want people to get on.
But I hope that we we pay it forward.
Yeah.
You know, and
You're
I think
real.
that's so important.
You're
You're
real.
real.
No, but you know what
Thank
though?
you,
I
man.
think we talked about this
Yeah.
off the record when
Yeah.
we recorded our episode with
Yeah,
you.
listeners, we recorded about like an hour with Darwin, but then we spent like a good 2 hours talking
Off the
afterwards.
record.
Yeah.
You know, what we have found, which I guess is a microcosm of, you know, life as well, is that, you know, there's a lot of people that we've reached out to that don't give us the time of day because, you know, they're influencers. And then there's other people that are very successful, that are very much the influencer, you know, very established, that have. And it's just really funny how, you know, there's
How it plays out.
how it plays out.
Yeah, I've experienced that too. It's just like I just let everybody just play their own lane. It's like everybody wants to play a lane and do their thing. I'm not trying to look down on you for doing what you want to do.
Yeah,
If
you don't owe me
feel-
anything.
You don't owe
Exactly.
me anything. I don't owe you anything. So when I do something, it's like I'm happy because I'm doing it. You know,
Yeah.
so it's like I'm doing something that makes me happy. And I feel it's probably the same thing with you guys with your podcast. Even if you bring somebody who might not be like the most known or something like that, you want to know their story.
Of
So
course.
it's like just that is rewarding upon itself, just finding out that story and recording
Just because
it.
you're not known doesn't mean you're not interesting.
Right.
Exactly.
And what we say this at the end of every episode, we say listen, laugh, and learn.
Yeah.
Because we're very, well, I like to think we're funny, you know, and we
Well,
talk
I've been
about.
called the comic relief in one of the reviews on iTunes.
Okay, he's
so-
a comic
Comic
relief.
relief.
We
I'll
keep
take
it. We keep it light many times. We're silly, but you know, we talk about, as we said,
Yeah.
also very thought-provoking
Yeah.
things. You know,
And hopefully in a way that people can relate to and kind of digest.
well, actually, that was when we started this, and we were kind of thinking about how we were going to do it. That was one of the things that him and I were very on the same page about. We want to talk about hot topic things, about, you know, current events,
Yeah.
about whether it's politics or culture or whatever. But we want to have a conversation as well, not only because we're friends, but as two regular people would. Because sometimes, you know, you turn on the the news and you want to know what's going on. And it's like all these pundits talking
Yeah.
and all that,
Just
which you're
yelling
kind of
at each
like,
other.
why am I even looking at
Yeah.
this? I just want to know what's going on and, you know, how it affects me or how people around me are going to think about something. And you see all these people talking about things that aren't really relevant to the everyday person. So that's kind of what we've tried to do in
Oh, you've accomplished it, man. You guys are doing it very well. I like the way you guys talk about the current events. You guys hit hot topics, you know. You guys punch. When you guys hit those hot topics, it's always really funny. You kind of are like comic relief because you always add like a funny tidbit and shit.
Yeah.
So
No,
I mean,
but what I like about his comic relief is that, because I'm more of like the straight man that
Yeah,
I like to
right.
keep things, you know. But he's funny and he's a comic relief, but he's also not an idiot. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly.
Right.
Or
Who wants to listen to two guys just be like, and then this happened? Like, you know, I mean, I just drive off the road, you know?
you know,
then
because I'm not there
Fall
talking
asleep
about,
Or,
you
or
know,
on the other, or
I'm
the
not
other
there
spectrum.
talking about, like, you know, Black Lives Matter. And he's like, well, you know, Bozo the clown. You know, it's
Right.
like, no, he'll say funny
He
things,
probably
but
wouldn't care, though, because he did a lot of whiteface. Bozo the Clown.
white face.
Yeah.
Wow,
so, you know,
you're gonna lose all your sponsorships, bro. Don't talk about any kind of faces, yo.
we'll just talk about our faces.
Our
So-
faces,
so.
yes.
Well, if anybody want to reach out to you, where can they reach out to you? Where can they listen
you're
to
good
your
at
stuff?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm opening the scroll of like
Open
72
the
different things.
scrolls.
So we are on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And if you want to reach out to us, whether it just be to say, hi, how are you? Or I think you guys suck and here's why. You can shoot us an email to peroletmepodcast@gmail.com.
And then, of course, we're also on Instagram. That's our big hub. At Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Pero Let Me Tell You.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on to the Que Bola podcast, talking to
thank
us
you.
about your stuff, how you put it on for South Florida, how you put on through your podcast. I hope nothing but like a bright future for you guys. You guys are really putting in work. You guys drop how often? Every week?
Every Friday.
Every Friday. So you
Friday.
guys are definitely putting in
Hashtag
that
Pero
work.
Friday.
Yeah.
That's
Every
what's up,
Friday.
man.
So there's a lot of Pero Let Me Tell You. Well, I mean, if we want to keep it current, we felt that's...
Yeah, it has to be like, yeah. So that's what's up, man. I appreciate you guys. I see you guys putting in work. And anybody wants to go, you could go listen to all the back Pero Let Me Tell Yous and catch up. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to the Que Bola podcast. This is Darwin Figueroa, the host. If you like it, share with your friends. If you don't like it, share with your enemies. Just share this shit, all right? Peace. I love y'all.
So I want to really give a special thanks to DJ and Ish, the Pero Let Me Tell You podcast guys. Thank you so much. At Pero Let Me Tell You on IG. Thank you so much for coming on. Talk to us, letting us know what's popping off in your world, how you put it on, and how you succeeding. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. If you love it, share it with your friends. And if you hate it, share it with your enemies. But just share this motherfucker, all right? It's your boy D. Figueroa, Phresh Media. Holla at your boy till you see me in the street. Hasta la próxima. Cógelo con take it easy. I love you guys. Peace.